Welcome back, everyone. We've got an amazing episode for all of you today. It's one that I'm really excited about. Hopefully you will find it as interesting and entertaining for yourselves as well. So anytime we start talking about donor eggs or the fertility journey, there's lots of questions that come up, especially if you are using donor egg and third party. And so with that, there's lots of legal questions that come up. And so today I am super excited to have two attorneys, Echo and Robert, with us to talk about this and really dive deeper into this topic about third-party reproduction and specifically egg donors and what it means from a legal perspective. I know sometimes when we start talking about legal information, it can sound a little bit dry or a little bit boring. But today is going to be really interesting because we're going to dive deeper into information that all of you actually need to know when you are considering using an egg donor. So Robert and Echo, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm excited to dive in. Before I start asking some questions that I'm really interested in and hearing your answers, I'd love to have you both introduce yourselves to our audience and share a little bit about yourself and how you work together.
Ladies first.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Mark. I'm Echo Yang. I'm an attorney at law offices of Rettenmaier. We practice third-party reproductive law, and I have been practicing this field of law for the past 8 years.
I'm Robert Rettenmaier, and I'm the owner, president, and an attorney at the law offices of Robert Rettenmaier. And for the past 8 years, I've been assisting with egg donors and intended parents and assisting them go through the legal process and egg donor journeys.
Fantastic. So, I guess the first question that I have is, how did the both of you start working together?
We're married.
Okay.
We're married. First, I had a family law firm, and we have a family friend that asked us to do the legal work for a third-party reproductive case. And we went through that, loved the work, and then built a law firm that now does 100% surrogacy and egg donor cases.
Yeah, we met at the law school. So after we graduated from law school, he started practicing family law, and I was practicing banking, like financial laws.
Oh.
Until there was a opportunity, we got into this field. Introduced into this field, we both fall in love and built our family law, built our own firm focusing on this practice.
Yeah, I'm in the fertility field myself, and I love the work that we do with couples, just supporting them to grow a family, have a family, and all of that to me is fascinating. So I can understand how being on that side of it is rewarding for yourselves and possibly more rewarding than banking and family law. So it makes sense that you guys would do that. And now that I know you both are a couple and married, it makes more sense that you're working together. So that's beautiful. So as we're jumping into this topic, my first question for both of you is, why does a couple need an attorney when going through the egg donor process? I mean, I'm sure that some people might think, I don't need to do this and pay for an attorney. What's the big deal? I'll just sign some paperwork and off we go.
Well, first of all, the law under California law requires that you have an attorney for both the intended parent and for the surrogate. Secondly, you need to clearly define certain points inside this contract. Mainly, you need to clearly define what the responsibilities of each party are going to be. Secondly, who's going to own the egg and how the egg can be used in the future. And finally, you want to make sure that the egg that's going to be turned into an embryo can be implanted into the intended mother, or if you're going to use a third party, into a surrogate.
So all of that is laid out in this contract or agreement?
That is correct. And that's why you need a knowledgeable attorney, and not just any attorney from practice banking or any attorney who practice other type of law or your cousin or of this nature to handle your legal work. You need to get a knowledgeable attorney in third-party reproductive law.
And you mentioned in the beginning that in California, this is required that both the donor and the intended parents have an attorney. Can that attorney be the same attorney?
Yes,
Okay.
and for egg donor, but not for surrogacy cases.
Not for surrogacy cases. That makes
Correct.
sense. Okay. So for egg donor cases, we could have the egg donor and the intended parent use the same attorneys.
That is correct.
Okay. And then when you mentioned this in, specifically you said in California it's required. Are there other states where this is also required?
We're not barred in other states, so we can't necessarily speak to other states. However, the answer to your question is yes.
So generally, there are other states that are similar that have the similar requirements to California, but not all states do, right?
Correct.
Some states are just a little bit more lax and free with it.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And how long does the legal process typically take? I know it can vary, but in general.
In general, we started the legal process by drafting the contract. Then we send the contract to the donor and her attorney to review. And until both parties sign the contract, it probably takes, I would say, roughly a week for our practice, for our firm, because
Okay.
we aim to meet the deadlines and turn the whole legal process quick.
And so if someone starts the process and they once they pick their donor and they're starting the legal process, from beginning that legal process with picking the donor and getting that paperwork to them and choosing an attorney at that point as well and finalizing so that they can actually move forward with the process, what are we looking for? What are we looking towards in terms of a time frame?
For an egg donor case, we tend to be about a week or less.
Wow.
If the parties engage. So
Okay.
the biggest factor of how long it takes is if the egg donor and the intended parents are both very involved in the legal process, then it will go quick.
Okay.
If they are not super engaged, they take a long time to set their reviews, go back and forth on a few issues, then it could take a little bit longer.
Got it.
For an intended parent who works with our firm, it is the goal of our firm to have a contract to them within 24 business hours for them to review. But then it could take some time after that to coordinate time to review
Right.
with them. And after that, if it's an expedited case, then they could want a contract within the same day because you have to hit certain deadlines.
Got it.
At which point you would go through negotiating the contract and have a legal clearance issued to the doctor's office, the clinic.
Okay, that makes it, like, for me, anytime I've ever had to work with attorney, I'm thinking about weeks and months. I'm not thinking about days. So to hear 24 hours and 7 days is fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
We try our best to make sure that we move very quickly. And with egg donors, you don't want it to slow down because there's still a long process to go
Yeah.
if you're going to use a third party to assist.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I appreciate that. I'm sure that the donors and IPs also appreciate, the speed in which you process that, all of that. What's the longest it's ever taken for something to happen with you guys?
I would say that we've had 6 weeks or longer if the parties don't engage well.
Okay.
Or if they're on vacation and don't want to do a review. There's different circumstances when it would take longer, and usually they're reasonable circumstances. As the law office should be trying to push this through so that they can move forward with an already difficult journey of trying to have a child, needing to use an egg donor. This process is already daunting. They shouldn't have to wait a long time for the law office to coordinate.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you and appreciate that sentiment. I'm sure they do as well. Look, by the time someone or a couple has gotten to this part of their journey where they've now decided to use an egg donor, they've been trying for years, right? It's not like they just got to this point, say, oh, I want to have a child. We're going to go to egg donor. I mean, in most cases, that's not the case. So time for them is of the essence, and they want things to move forward as quickly as possible. So I really appreciate that, and on your end, I'm sure they do as well.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most important things as a law firm that you can understand about what they're going through, is that they didn't just wake up one morning and say, I need an egg donor. They probably tried to have a child. Then they went to the doctors, did some fertility work to try to increase their chance of having a child. And only when that didn't work, maybe even try to do a egg removal of their own, and then move on to doing an egg donor. So this is multiple years in the making, and attorneys should do what they can to move this process forward for them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yes.
Yeah. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I would say legal is important step, but it's a simple, very simple, straightforward step during this whole process for the egg donation process, I would say. And we tend to work quickly, wrap up the contract process quickly for the clients, for the intended parents or the egg donors. Sometimes because we work with some international donors, so if we take forever to wrap up the contract, it will increase the intended parents' costs. Because one more additional day for donors stay here, it's additional cost for the intended parents to have to pay for the hotels, for the meals, or such things. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. I mean, that's 100% accurate. So I have this interesting question that I'm about to ask all of you, but first thing I want to do is just mention to everybody watching that I'm going to ask some of these questions. I'm sure questions are popping up for all of you, so please post your questions in the comment section, and then we will get back to those questions and answer them as best as we can. But I'm sure questions are arising for you, so go ahead and pop those questions in the comment section. So the next question I have for all of you is, what are the most common questions you hear from intended parents as you are working through a contract and trying to push things forward for them?
So the number one question we always get asked every single time is, can the egg donor ever become the parent of this child? And under California law, that answer is no. Not as long as you worked with a knowledgeable attorney, signed the contract the way you're supposed to, and handled legal through a knowledgeable law firm, then you will be well protected.
Does that, that's because the agency that they're using, in this situation, we're talking about your egg donor agency, is in California,
That
correct?
And the legal, yes, and because the legal is going to be done under California law.
Okay.
So this is a jurisdictional aspect. You're requesting California to have control or power to act over the case.
Over the case, okay.
And the way that's done is because you are using an agency and a clinic, that the legal work is going to be done in the state of California, and therefore there are enough contacts with the state of California that will allow your case to have jurisdiction in the state of California.
Now, does that change if they're choosing an agency, an egg donor agency in California, but their fertility clinic, let's say, is in Texas? And I'm just using Texas as an example, but it could be any other state outside of California. They found their donor through the Your Eggs agency, and that donor is then going to be working with that clinic in Texas. How does that change things?
It would change it because the power to act over the case, you might not have it just by the location of where the agency is. Where the medical is going to be, or where either the party resides, is going to give contacts.
Okay.
And not necessarily the agency itself being in the state of California doesn't necessarily give the power to act. But the clinic being here in San Diego, California, or being somewhere located in California would give California the power to act over that case.
So it definitely changes things if they are working with a clinic in another state and choose Your Eggs as their donor agency who resides in California. It changes the dynamic of that relationship and that contract. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. Echo, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, what the lawyer explained is basically in legal term as jurisdiction.
Okay.
So what gives California jurisdiction to cover the whole case, the egg donation contract? So one is one gives a jurisdiction to California as where the IVF clinic located. This has nothing to do with where the agency located. Second is where the parties reside. The parties means the intended parents or the egg donor. The third is where the contract is signed, entered. So if the intended parents are in California, they just come here to visit, but they sign the contract here, that will give California jurisdiction as well. Same for the donor. And the fifth thing I would say, this is like arguably, like on legal wise, where the child in the future is anticipated to be born. So all those different ways, it's like either or. It's not like you have to meet all the conditions. It's either or. We can pick on one condition that allows California give the jurisdiction over the case.
Understood. So to me, when we were talking before, earlier before this question, and we were asking about, the time frame for a contract and an agreement, to me, it was like, oh, this is great. This is so straightforward and so simple. It's, we just engage you guys. You'll sign some paperwork, and off we go. We're going to be, having our donor moving forward in a short process. But there's lots of layers to this. It's not, if you're working with a clinic in a different state, if you live in a different state, if the agencies in California are not, where the child's going to live, all of these things layer in and impact the jurisdiction, impact the law, impact the contract. So that is, for me, even more of a reason why we need some good attorneys to work on our side to write a contract that really is supportive in that regard.
Absolutely, because we always say work with a good attorney, work with an attorney who is knowledgeable in this area. It's not just because like we want to do like commercial, like advertising like ourselves. It's
right.
Like you do need that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the number one question you get asked, right? Is does the donor have any rights to this, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is there another common question that gets asked?
Another common question that gets asked is, can the child, if they want to when they grow up, can they have a relationship with the donor even though that donor isn't going to be a parent and still be protected from making sure they don't become the parent of the child?
Is this what, and I apologize for interrupting, is this what we would call like closed or open or semi-open? Is that falling into that line?
At this point, it would not.
Okay.
But it would be something that you would want to know so that you could set your contract up into an open, semi-open, or a closed contract.
Okay.
Because you would want to gauge the donor's willingness to be contacted in the future. This is what's called future contact between the parties. So this is a very common question that some people don't think about beforehand, and they get into legal and they say, I would really like this for my kid, and they didn't think about it during matching. So it's important for the viewers who are thinking about getting an egg donor to talk about this issue. What if my kid does want to, say hello or ask a few questions? When this happens, the egg donor also has to want to be contacted.
Sure.
Right? And if you don't have an egg donor that wants to be contacted, then you want that to be, you probably need a different egg donor. And you'll be able to find that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point to bring up in terms of thinking about that, because as you mentioned, they might not think about that until they get into the process, into the legal aspect. They've already selected a donor. Now they realize they do want this, and that donor doesn't want it, right? And so It's good to think about that right now for all of you out there. These questions that they're bringing up, the context of all of this is important to contemplate as you are thinking about using an egg donor. What's the most common thing that we see in that regard? Is it closed?
Definitely it is closed. So about 1% or less cases are open or semi-open. What open or semi-open means is that either both parties were disclosed inside the contract, the names of both parties, or only one party was disclosed, and normally that's the egg donor. in a closed, neither party's name is disclosed inside the contract. There will be an additional page that will be signed by each party individually, and that'll be for their legal name. That will be kept by the law office.
So I'm sure you have other important things, that you want to cover, or that get asked. But, for me, I'm always looking for interesting things, interesting stories. So what's one of the biggest issues, or what's the biggest issue that you've seen over the years that viewers potentially should be aware of?
Okay, so one of the biggest issues we ever had to deal with was we had a couple that went through the surrogacy aspect, was when they became the parent, they were trying to take their child back home and naturalize the child, but the egg donor portion of that contract that they set up with the egg donor wasn't done properly. So you have to work with knowledgeable attorneys that will assist you in setting up the contracts that is necessary for you, not only to comply with U.S. law, but also to comply with the law of where you are trying to naturalize your child. In this case, it was Georgia, the country Georgia, has to have an open egg donor contract. Otherwise, they won't recognize the contract, and you can't naturalize the child. So we had to track down the egg donor, which was really hard. And then we had to get an addendum to the contract and get her agree to open the donation, so to disclose her information to the other party. Had we not been able to do that, then that child would never be able to go back to Georgia. The parent who went through the whole surrogacy journey wouldn't get to raise their child.
Wow. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And you didn't mention this, but I'm gathering that that's because, well, I'm going to make an assumption. They didn't use you guys the whole time in this process. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
So whoever they were working with before missed a step or missed a process.
That is
and
correct.
That's what left them in this position. You guys had to clean it up.
Right. We get
Got
that
it.
panic call from online. We found you guys. Can you help us out? We need someone who's knowledgeable in the area. I say, who did you use? No names being dropped. So find a good law office. Your eggs will lead you to a good attorney, hopefully us. And then move through the process with them. Trust them. Right?
Yeah.
And another thing I want to add here is for the egg donors, if you work with a knowledgeable agency like Your Eggs, if you work with our law firm, law offices of Robert Rettenmaier, and they acknowledge the clinic that you're going to work with as a viable third-party clinic, then you will have a smoother process. It'll be set up correctly from the beginning so that you won't have to run into these issues.
So I think that's really important, and I'm going to read between the lines a little bit and say, if we're not trying to cut corners, if we want to make sure that things are done properly in the right way, then make sure those three things are taken care of, that you've got a good agency, a good clinic, and a good attorney. And I would add to that reputable across the board with all three of those.
Yes.
That's what really makes sure in the end that you're not going to run into any issues. And I know on the fertility journey, it's expensive and all these things cost money, but this is not the place to cut corners. We want to make sure that, especially when it comes to legal work, that it's done the right way so that you are taken care of. So I appreciate that.
Yes, and to add to that point is in some circumstances, it's necessary to slow the process down so that you can make sure everything is set up correctly from the very beginning. And no one likes the process to slow down, but if the attorney or your agency tells you it's time to slow down, we need to bring in this person to get this knowledge or to certify how contracts need to be set up, so from your local attorney in your local country, it's very, very important that you are receptive to this information.
Yeah, so I would assume that if those things are done, then we don't really have big issues and problems, right?
Absolutely correct.
That's
Absolutely.
what we want.
Yes. Get
Okay.
those things done.
Exactly, and do it
Yes.
right. So we will, by the way, for everyone watching, and again, if you've got questions, just drop them in the comment section, but we will put Robert and Echo's information in the description below. If you want to reach out to them for any reason, we'll put their information in the description below as well.
And if you mention your eggs, we're happy to answer anything for free.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. So what are, and I know you're licensed in California, but I feel compelled to ask the question, what are legal requirements, or how do they change and how do they impact the relationship of everything if from state to state, or even you mentioned Georgia, from country to country, right? Like there's so much intricacy to all of this.
Right. How they differ from state to state is the way each law has different laws on the books. California is very, very friendly to allow you to set up the contracts in the manner that you want them set up. Now, what is important if you're an international client is to get a local attorney involved at that point, because they're the ones who are going to know whether or not you need an open donation, whether or not you need a closed donation, how the contracts need to be set up. Your attorney can assist you with that, but you won't know the local laws until you get that local attorney in.
When you say local, you mean local where they are, where the parents are.
That is correct.
So would it be wise, and I'll interject to say yes here, but would it be wise to have an attorney as intended parents? Let's just say they were in France. So attorneys in France and then an attorney here because they're using the agency in California, or they really just need one party, one attorney?
It is absolutely necessary, especially in France, that you have a local attorney, because it changes depending on what part of France you are from. So the rules are different in every part of France, and an attorney here is not a specialist there.
Okay.
They can't certify, even if they know the answer, they can't certify that they are doing it correct. They need an attorney there to be on board, and it's at the egg donor process where you should get your attorney that's going to help guide you through the process. So even though you need an attorney that's very knowledgeable on U.S. law, you also need an attorney in your local country, let's just say France, that's going to know how you need everything set up so that your child will be able to become a French citizen.
Got it. So essentially, you are gonna have two different attorneys to consult with, because, the ones in France, for this example, would be consulting also with the ones here in the U.S. or in California, and vice versa, to make sure everything goes smoothly.
That is absolutely correct. Okay. And if you work with our office, the first thing we're going to ask is, who is your local counsel? Right? Because I want to have that conversation with them, because every counsel does things a little bit different. They have what they like, what they don't like. And it's very, very important that this gets worked out in the beginning, and your local U.S. counsel does not ask that question, then you need a different local U.S. counsel.
That's a great point. So hopefully everybody heard that, right? Like he said, the first question he's going to ask you if you're international is, who is your local attorney and counsel? And if you don't have one, or that question wasn't asked, we need to find a different attorney to work with. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to stick on this topic about international for just a moment, because we're there, so I might as well stay there. Is it different? Is there a difference if the intended parents are international or if the donor is international? How does that impact the situation?
So I'm going to answer this in two parts. First, with the intended parents.
Okay.
There is no difference for the U.S. side, speaking specifically about California. There's no difference if you're international or if you're not international. Now, the reason why you would want to be in California versus another state is because the laws differ greatly.
From state to state.
From state to
About
state.
international.
About international, about how receptive they are to international parents, about what you can do with the embryos that are created, how you can dispose of them or how you can use them. Very different from state to state.
Okay.
In California, you're going to have a very predictable outcome.
Okay.
And it's not going to matter whether you're not married, whether you are married. It's not going to matter whether you're international, whether you're heterosexual, whether you're gay, or whatever country you come from, you're going to get the same result.
They've worked it in such a way that the process is the same regardless.
That is correct.
Okay. But that could be very different from state to state.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, how about on the other side, on the
egg donor side?
On the egg donor side, yeah.
Okay. So on the egg donor side, there still is no difference on whether it's an international egg donor or it's a U.S. egg donor. Now, there are some important things you do need to think about, and this is very, very important, is the donor has to be able to get a visa to come to the United States. Right. So you need to make sure that this is possible before you pay the money either to the agency or to the attorney to start legal.
Okay.
Right? Don't start working up her medical until you know that she's going to be able to come to the clinic of your choosing. Or work with your eggs to say, hey, I really want this one. There's not a visa. Is there other options? Like, can I go to another clinic? What can we get set up? I really love your egg donor. How are we going to get this to work? So
let me interject or ask a subsequent question here. So if they're working with a good, reputable agency, is all that already taken care of?
Yes.
Okay. So then they don't have to worry.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So that's also the important piece here, like you mentioned earlier,
Correct.
which is finding a good, reputable agency like your eggs, where
Yes.
assuming that they've already found their donor, that all that work in terms of making sure the visas and whatnot are already taken care of because they've done that work for them.
Absolutely correct.
Awesome. Okay.
And again, this is another one of those points that if your agency, when you ask them that there can be a visa, if they don't have that answer for you right away, you probably should pick a better agency like your eggs. Someone who's thought this through, who has enough experience, who looks at the whole process for you and makes sure that there aren't loose ends that are going to end up harming you or delaying the process in the end.
Okay. Well, I definitely, I think the point that we want to hit home to everybody is working with the right people, right?
Yes.
Like, you've got to work with the right people. And this is true for, I think, anything in life, right? I'm sure you've realized this on your fertility journey, that if you were not working with the right doctor, the right clinic, the right embryologist, and so forth, the results just don't work out the way you would hoped or wanted. This is no different, right? So working with the right agency, the right clinic, the right attorneys will make this process so much easier and with less headache. So I think that's super huge to bring up.
I have a very interesting story for you about a surrogacy case that did not go well.
I love stories.
All right. What happens when you don't work with a reliable agency?
Okay.
This is what happens. One of my very, very first experience online calls, it's always an online call, right? And this is surrogacy and not necessarily egg donor.
Okay.
Although it was a donated egg because it was a traditional surrogacy.
Ah.
A set of doctors, intended parents, did a turkey baster, found a contract online.
And use the contract.
And used the contract. Didn't comply with the laws in the state of California.
And they were both in California?
And they were both in
Got
California. And it took significant legal work to undo all the mistakes that they had made.
Wow.
So that the child didn't go to foster care.
Really?
That is correct.
The child was close to going to foster care.
The child was already born without a parentage order, and the court was ready to get CPS involved.
Wow. So that was a super interesting and fascinating story, and I hope everyone watching can appreciate, because maybe for the common viewer, this story of using a turkey baster and inseminating at home and getting pregnant is not something that you can relate to. But being in the fertility world myself, I'm telling you, this is a conversation that I have on a regular basis with couples, truly on a regular basis. And they're always saying, oh, can I just have my friend donate his sperm? I'm like, well, you can, but you should have a contract. You should have some a legal team review it and work with you. So I appreciate that story, because it might not sound common, but I'm telling you, it's absolutely common. It happens on a regular basis. So
yes, on at least a weekly basis, do I get questions about, can't I have this individual who is my sister donate an egg? And it's going to be the sperm of my husband. Yes, but put it in a contract.
Right.
Right.
Make everything legal.
Make everything legal. Using family members is fine, but talk to your agency. And then also make sure you get qualified attorneys, knowledgeable attorneys to assist you in the process.
So as we wrap up, is there anything specific, anything you want to share with our viewers, any last words of wisdom, anything that they can take away that we haven't already talked about?
I would emphasize it again. Work with a good agency, work with a good IVF clinic doctor, and work with a good attorney. That's very, very important things. And also because I had this banking experience, so I'm always thinking about money. Because the one thing we didn't talk about before is a trust account for the money. We encourage intended parents to deposit the funds into the trust account, either held by attorney office or by escrow company. So that way they know that their funds are safe and the donor will get paid at the end.
Great. I think that's a really important piece too, that if someone is not using a trust account or an escrow account, that we should beware, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the safe way to handle money. Well, I really want to thank both of you so much for joining us today. I found the conversation super fascinating. I think the information you shared was so important, and hopefully everybody watching found the value as well. So thank you so much for watching. Again, if you've got comments, make sure you leave them below. And if you want more information about using a donor egg, please check out the Your Eggs app. You can download it on your phone, Apple or Android, and you can also go to youreggs.com. Until the next video, everyone.